The views and opinions expressed in these historical letters that may contain vernacular used in the World War II era, the post-war era, and the Cold War era do not reflect the views and opinions of any of the individuals involved with this project, including, but not limited to, the podcast's creators. Morning, Jamie.
Good morning, Allison.
How are you doing this morning?
Well, I'm ecstatic because we are on episode 50.
Episode 50. Cheers to that.
Cheers to that.
And here we are with Sweetie in 1946. She is now at Love Lane, or that's where we think we're going to pick up the story because that's where we left it in August. But we've got such a special episode coming up today with the story. And I love when the big number episodes have this really significant story that's happened. So I'm not going to spoil any of it for our audience. It is just a delight. You're in for a treat this episode. Sweetie's positive, which is great. It's a very happy episode. But there's just so much great detail. We'll get into that very, very quickly today. Just a few notes, so let's just dive into the basics. If you could please like, share, and subscribe to the Love Sweetie podcast on YouTube. We really, really appreciate that. Thank you to all of our returning audience. Welcome to all of our new audience that may be tuning in for the first time. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the other audio channels. If you're listening audio only, please, if you would, leave a review. We very much appreciate that. And then please check out our website at www.lovesweetiepodcast.com. A lot of updates there, a lot of photos being updated there. Just wonderful galleries, things to look through. So if you have time to peruse a website one day and you want to look at some more details, especially those photo albums, go ahead and check out that. Again, www.lovesweetiepodcast.com. That all being said, Jamie, we're just going to dive in. We've got so much great content.
Oh, today's a good one.
Before we go into the first letter, I do have an artifact I wanted to bring up here. And originally I thought that this would be read as a letter, but it's not really a letter. But it is a historical document. Again, gloves on.
The gloves are on.
So on November 9th of 1946, Sweetie's going to send something out to her sister. And this is a thing that I believe it still exists today, just not in this form anymore. And that is a Western Union. So this is the telegram. And it's Jeanne's birthday in November. So that's the other thing. We left off in August and all of a sudden we're in November. That's because there's really no content for September, October. And we're going to find out why here in a moment. But we're going straight to November 9th and I'm going to hold it up here. This is a Western Union that's being sent. And I did take a quick picture of this. And by the way, we have the original envelope. A little worse for wear over time, but sweet. Jeanne kept everything. So we get to see what that looks like. So again, here's the document. You can see the relative size. And then I'm going to bring it up on the screen here so people can actually look at the text. So if you need to get your text message out in 46, this is how you're going to do it. Short amount of information. Happiest birthday wishes, fondest love letter. Following equals Louis K. and Lou. We can see it was sent at 5:37 p.m., right? We have a time on it, timestamp, on November 9th of 1946. And this is heading to Jeanne to celebrate her birthday and where she is living. And that's how they would have sent it back then. So here is the 46 version of your happy birthday text message that you would have gotten. And you can see what that looks like. So I thought that was really great. We don't see telegrams all the time, but of course Jeanne kept it because it's her birthday card.
That's so funny because you're right. It's like a text message. It just required a lot more effort.
A lot more effort, yeah.
More effort. But it got quickly. This was the way that they could get things quickly to each other.
Yep, this is it. So wanted to show that so people could see what that would look like. Now we'll get into the letters. So we're going to start with the first one, and then we'll go back and explain what's going on. November 23rd, 1946. Dear Jeanne, here is a letter from Bob that you want returned. I'm going through boxes doing my fall house cleaning. I came across a couple more that I laid aside, and now mislaid for the time being. They are safe, though, and I shall not forget that you want them. I was surprised to hear Marion is getting married, and I hope you'll keep me posted on the progress. I've surely enjoyed your letters, and my nails are down to the quick, as I give vent to my remorse and shame in not answering. I really did enjoy my visit, no matter how short, and I treasure the memories of it. I do hope you'll plan a trip here as soon as you have a vacation. We're surely at a loss as to Christmas. If my sewing machine had come, I could have made nearly all of them and saved much money. It didn't, and now I'm sunk. What do you suggest, please? More later. All our love. Sweetie, Lou, and Louis.
So that was a lovely little letter. And
Mm-hmm.
it kind of gave us a little bit. So we know she went out to Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
In our last letter, she was talking about she had ordered the sewing machine from Sears Roebuck, and it was on back order, and it's still not there.
Not there. Yeah. Let's examine that time delay again, because we've made a sudden jump here.
Mm-hmm.
The last letters we listened to in episode 49 were in August. This is now basically around Thanksgiving, right? November, late November. So what's that? 3 more months? No sewing machine.
And that's, I think that they said it was going to be 2 months at first.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turned into 3.
And now it's another 3. So
Oh, goodness.
the saga of the sewing machine will continue for
The sewing
some
machine
time.
saga.
Sewing machine saga.
That's
Definitely
that's what it is. But so she's something else here that she did. And she's always so, like, she takes it so hard on herself that she's not writing.
Yep.
And she's like, I bit my nails down to the quick, and I'm so and like, I always feel so bad because she's busy out there.
Oh yeah. She's all by herself. She's a new mom. Taking care of business, dealing with the energy of the Graham household. Though of course they're at Love Lane now, so she's got her space. So that's positive. But she'd been talking how many times in the spring, I'm going to get to, we weren't sure if she was actually going to get there. I'm going to get to Lacona. I'm going to go visit family. We're going to have this trip. And I feel like we're going back to like 1944. She was planning a lot and things fell through.
Yeah.
This is one of those times where it didn't fall through. She needed that badly. So she got to Iowa. She got to visit with family. It was too short, as she said. Chester would have believed it was too short because he would have tried to keep her there forever. She clearly got there. And that's why we're not seeing letters from September and October, because she had been planning to go in September. And then October, at this point in time, the trip has happened. So she doesn't need to write letters to family because she's there. But still a significant amount of time has passed. She is feeling remorse that she hasn't written, which means she probably has got a lot to catch up on. And that's why the rest of this episode, Jamie, is just one letter.
Just one, Allison.
Just
really?
one.
Just one.
One really big letter. She's going to make up for all of her nail biting that she was doing and tell this story. And we're going to get to hear a piece of the trip. This letter is so big that it's been split into 3 videos in 3 distinct parts that are actually distinct by content. So we're going to go into the first one, which is part of the trip we're going to get to hear about. And it's a really great portion. So we're just going to let Sweetie tell her story as much as possible throughout the episode today, because my goodness, we're in for a treat. So here's part 1 of 3, part 1 of her letter from the next day, November 24th, 1946. 37 South Love Lane, Norwood, Pennsylvania, November 24th, 1946. Dear Mama, Daddy, Jeanne, Sister et al., and Frank, Meta, and Susie. My head is bowed, my brow wet. I have housemaid's knee, and my hands are wet from being clapped so tightly together. But as you see, I did succeed in borrowing the typewriter again. I mean to make the most of it, and so I'm sitting down right now to write to all of you and try to bring you up to date as near as I can. I'll have to start way back at the start of things, so to make my story coherent to all. Excuse the paper, but if I'm to make readable copies, I must use this, the only thin paper I have. I'll try to get some decent paper as soon as I can, but for now, it is this or nothing. I believe I wrote you that the bed made in the chair was just about our biggest convenience of the trip. You know, we left at just about Louis's nap time, and so he was falling asleep in the auto seat before we reached the Sheraton pavement. We had to stop always to transfer him from the front seat to the bed, but even that was little to bother with, when he could be laid down to sleep as long as he cared to. It was a pretty day, as you remember, and so the ride was quite enjoyable. We got to Ottumwa, and since Marcine's sister lived just a block and a half off the highway, we decided to try to find her. We go to the house but didn't find anybody, and so we just let it go without looking further. Lou was hungry, so we went to the Canteen. Perhaps you remember that, Jeanne, the little restaurant up an alley in downtown Ottumwa? And after we'd had a sandwich and were getting ready to leave, Ed Willems came in with his younger brother, who was also wearing navy blues. He recognized me right away and came to talk to me. He is very fat, but seemed quite prosperous. He had little to say, but that's nothing out of the ordinary. We got gas, and I drove out of Ottumwa on our way. We passed through Parsons just to say hello and goodbye. I saw no one that I knew. I drove on into Burlington, and when Lou took over at the Mississippi Toll Bridge, I wasn't tired, but Lewis needed some attention, and so I entertained him. We found it best to dry him at filling stations, so that we could stretch him out and work on the front seat, rather than for me to lean over the back of the front seat and dry him while he was lying on the bed.
That's at the start of this story.
Yep.
She is in Iowa. She's in Lacona.
Yep.
And her and Lou and little Lewis have left to return back to Philadelphia. Correct?
That's right. Yep. They're leaving in that. Remember, we just recently had the letter where she described they got the car.
Mm-hmm. Very nice car.
Very nice car. So we think, we'll see how that goes for this very long road trip, but it's the 1936 Oldsmobile. That's what they're driving. That sort of like aquamarine car.
That they got for a really great deal.
Yep, really good deal. And so they're leaving and they're going, it says, through Sheraton pavement. Now we know Sheraton is towards like the southeast. It's southeast of Lacona.
Mm-hmm.
So they're heading east across the bottom border. And I do have a map that we'll bring up at the end of this if people are trying to visualize this. But they're heading east from Lacona. And Lacona is like directly south of Des Moines. If you have a nice sort of rectangular vision in your mind of Iowa, and you put Des Moines right in the center, and just go like an hour south of it, you just start heading directly east. And if you go far enough towards the south a little bit, of course, they're going to pass through Ottumwa. You know, we've seen where Ottumwa is on the map many times, but that's in the southeast corner for any newer listeners. And this is where, of course, she'd worked. And, well, she'd lived for a few years. She married Lou in Ottumwa. She and him were both at Naval Air Station Ottumwa. So if you are new in season 2 to this, go back, like I would say, 20 episodes or so from the early part of the podcast are all content from Ottumwa. So this is like a little reunion. They want to pass through. And where do they go? They go to the Canteen in the alley. I'm so excited about talking about the Canteen in the alley because canteens, of course, are like these little lunch spots. And she's going to go get a sandwich. And I have to imagine that she probably got a loose meat sandwich, which they have in Iowa. Sort of imagine a sloppy Joe minus all of the sauce, like a burger that's just loose. That's really what the specialty is out there. She would always say she was having a hamburger sandwich.
It was a hamburger sandwich.
Hamburger sandwich. So I'm thinking they had some hamburger sandwiches. And what's amazing about Canteen in the Alley is this is still open today.
That is so cool.
Yeah, if you're in Ottumwa, it's been open since the 20s. They have the sign on the board. I'll bring up the picture later on in this episode. Canteen in the Alley, still open. I had to go when I was there to go to one of the places where she obviously had been. And they would have been there a lot, you know, during their time in Ottumwa and things like that. And it was fantastic. So kudos to everybody in Ottumwa, Canteen in the Alley. Really good milkshakes, too, if you're in for like, you know, hamburger sandwich and milkshakes. Go to Canteen in the Alley. And I was there road tripping through with my dad. And he was excited to go there, too, because that's where his parents had been.
Yeah.
But he's like, oh, I've never been here before.
Oh, yes, he has.
Then we got to the letter afterwards. And I said, hey, remember when we went to the canteen? You can't remember it because you were only a year old. But you've been here before. So it was this interesting little moment where he realized as a 1-year-old, he'd been at the canteen as well.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it's so great. But if you're out there, if you're ever in Ottumwa, you got to go and have like your 40s experience and go to the Canteen in the Alley. Wonderful food, just really nice little lunch spot. It literally is in an alley. So we know this is exactly what she's talking about. And it's called Canteen in the Alley to this day. And then she drives by Parsons? She basically waves. That's the idea I got. I was like, oh, bye. That's over in Fairfield, Iowa. It's gone today. Parsons College, but that's where she'd gone for that one semester, it would seem. And then the bridge over the Mississippi was toll. So they cross over the Mississippi River because on the eastern border of Iowa, The entire eastern border of Iowa is the Mississippi River. And on the other side is Illinois. So they're going to head in. But we can pick up the story from there. But it's nice to see Ottumwa again a little bit.
I don't remember where we ate, or just where we got at what time, but I do remember that I got terribly tired, and instead of talking to keep Lou awake while he drove, I found he was talking to keep me awake, and when it got to the place that we were not very safe, we decided we'd better stop. We were at Genoa, Illinois, when we found a tourist home and stopped. I was surprised to find that it was only 9 or a little after. It seemed much later than that. Louis had already gone to sleep in his little bed, and so we had to wake him to go to bed like a child should. We dropped right off to sleep. Louis had to sleep with us in the big bed, and seemed determined, in spite of all I could do, to fall off the bed, so most of the night I had to remain conscious enough to hang on to him. I woke up the next morning at about 6:30 and got up immediately to lay out the clean clothes to be put on, pack the dirty ones and get dressed, etc. We got out to the car and found a tire low, and it wouldn't start. Just as it had done all the time we were at home, so did it refuse to start. We were much delayed trying to get somebody to push us. We did finally, and got some air in the tire, and went on for about 6 miles, trying to find a place to have breakfast, and when we stopped again the tire was much lower, so to a garage, where we found that the valve stem was ruined. While we ate breakfast, we got the inner tube fixed. They just put a new stem in, for it was a very good tube otherwise. Then we went right across the road to a garage to see if they would be able to do anything about the starting of it, and also it had started to miss a little, and lost a lot of power. They replaced the spark plugs and put on new points, charged us a nice big bill, and we went on, knowing that it had not helped a great deal. It was noon before we left the garage, and started on. But we determined to make up for the late start, and drove, and drove, and drove, and drove, taking turns, but we could neither of us sleep while the other was driving. By the time we had come to the lesser mountains, it was dark, and lights were necessary. The car was panting by then, and instead of zooming over as it had done on the trip out, we had to shift gears, pamper, and even pant to get her up and over. I did fall asleep, and Lou missed his turn, going about 11 miles off the course. We turned around, and after finding our signposts, we stopped by the side of the road to sleep for a little while. It had turned much colder, and when we woke up at 5 o'clock, there was a heavy fog and mist.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about like this road trip
Mm-hmm.
and the way that road trips were in the 40s. I've driven this stretch, like not in Illinois, but in Ohio. Like I know exactly where she's driving. So they had to like pay attention to signposts to like tell you where you needed to go or where the hotels were, where the places to eat, where you just basically had to keep your eyes open.
Yeah.
Keep driving and hope for the best.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we think about, if you think about like the Fords, the early Fords in like the 20s and 30s, at this time when they're taking this trip, that's only like 20, 30 years earlier. So this whole idea of road tripping this amount of distance within a day or two in an automobile is still pretty new. Like the previous generation barely did this. Now, Chester had his Ford. She'd moved around a lot, as a kid. We know that the family moved around. For those that weren't aware of this, he was in Civilian Conservation Corps. So he lived in a number of places. And when he bought the place in Lacona, that was the first home he ever bought because he'd moved around to about a dozen different towns before there being town doctor. And his kids were born basically in different places. Some were not born in Iowa as a result of this. This is just a new idea, this ability to be able to travel independently, not on a train or not having to like require, a coach to come by and things like that. This is still relatively new in the country. So what are they going to worry about? Well, the car seemed to be doing fine, I guess, when Lou headed out, because we know that she was planning on taking the train to get out there. So what I suspect happened is she and Louis took the train out, and then Lou followed when he could get leave to come get them, allowing her to stay a little longer.
Mm-hmm.
And he was probably like, the car's doing great. Well, it's not doing so great by the time they start heading towards what they call the lesser mountains. She's not in Pennsylvania yet. So I will call this out in the letter, and there is a reason that we know that. So this is somewhere around Ohio, where things are just kind of getting a little strenuous on the car. And I love that she describes the car as panting. And you
Yeah.
get the idea of like the old car. It's like, come on, make it up that hill, right?
I can't
A
even
little car
imagine.
that
And
could.
those were powerful cars.
Oh yeah.
And also you got to wonder, was it designed to travel this far? Was it designed to
Mm-hmm.
like drive for this long? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
That's
Mm-hmm.
not necessary. Like you said, this is a new concept. So
Yep.
they're really pushing it. They're
They
pushing
really
the
are.
limits of this car. And, as somebody who has been stranded on the side of the road,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and we all know this is horrible. And I can't even
Mm-hmm.
imagine not having a cell phone, but they did
Nope.
it. They're like, we
They
got a
did it.
kid. We're
Mm-hmm.
young. We're going
With
to
the
stay at
baby.
this tour. Yeah, they had the baby.
They have the baby in the back. Yeah.
Oh,
In
the
this little
baby in the
makeshift
back
bed.
seat. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That's great. But yeah, so this is a new monster. This is a
Definitely.
new thing
Mhm.
that they're experiencing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy, but she doesn't sound like they don't sound upset. They're just like they
No,
roll with the
it is
punches.
what it is. You gotta
Yeah,
keep
exactly.
going. Well, luckily, I think it was helpful that Lou, like, worked on engines, so he probably felt a little more confident, even though their plane engines are different. Like, he had that mechanic kind of vibe.
Yeah.
They might make mention of what's called the tourist home. We don't really use that phrase anymore, but I think this is kinda like the inn on the way.
Mhm.
And we have to remember that if you go all the way back to the colonial days, I know from Philadelphia, when they built like the main roads heading up into the more rural areas, they would have the post office and like a stopping point every 24 miles because that's really how far a horse could go in a day. And that's why those towns wound up where they did when they weren't close to rivers. So I kind of think that this is the tourist home is the idea of like these stopping points along what would be considered the bigger routes back then that are used to having people having to stop, that they're going to get a little further. But you're following signs, there's no GPS. At least he only missed 11 miles off course and was able to make his way back because, I mean, they could have wound up in Kentucky at this point or
Oh
West
my.
Virginia.
Mhm.
And it's night. So you're already struggling. Maybe you're not paying attention too much, but they managed to get back on track. I kind of get the sense that like she says, I fell asleep. Lou missed his turn and we turned around. Like, did she wake up and she was just like, yeah, that sign's not right. Maybe Lou would have kept going. I don't know.
Oh gosh, have you
Uh,
ever done that? Ooh,
don't want to
yeah,
wind
that's
up in
not
West
fun.
Virginia if you're struggling with mountain driving because West Virginia, which she doesn't mention going through, and I doubt they did, is known as the mountain state because when you deal with West Virginia, there's so many like mountainous turns. I'm not sure this Oldsmobile would have made it over if they like went off course and went down into West Virginia. The mountains are extraordinary there,
Oh yeah.
but it would have been trouble. So they did, turn back on course. But yeah, just an amazing trip so far. And they get the car mostly fixed. It's still going. This is the actual
Yeah.
puttering. It's puttering up the
It's
road.
puttering.
Like
It's puttering
this
along.
one is. Yeah. And panting along. And then we're going to hit Pennsylvania. Yeah, let's head on with the story. Let's see what happens when they really start to face mountains, which is Jamie's neck of the woods over there
Mhm.
in the western part of PA.
We had made it across Indiana and most Ohio before too late, and when we stopped to sleep, we were just about even with Pittsburgh. Only we were south of there by quite a bit. We had about 2 hours driving before we came to the turnpike. The sun had come up, and it had cleared miraculously by the time we got there, and I was very glad, for the turnpike was just about the highlight of the entire trip. It was 4 lanes wide and built like a speedway, almost. You entered only at certain points, and you could leave only at certain points, which were usually 6 to 9 miles apart. It cost, I think, $4.50 round-trip ticket. Howard Johnson, the Eastern Fred Harvey, bought all the filling stations and restaurants along the way, and they were spaced every so often, too, along the way. There were 7 tunnels through the largest mountains that average a mile in length. The entrances to these tunnels were quite elaborate, and put the Arc of Triomphe in my mind as we entered them. Each tunnel had its own crash truck and armed guards, and the white Pennsylvania patrol cars were to be seen quite often. The road was very fine. There were grades, to be sure, but nothing like our poor olds had panted up during the night before we reached the pike. The cut through the mountains was great, and the strata of rock was clearly visible high and steep. Often there were warnings about falling rocks, though we never saw any falling. It was very great and pretty, but the trees were the truly beautiful part of it all. We didn't see many very close on account of the cut and the steep drop-off, but off in the distance we could see them, and you cannot imagine such colors as there were. It seemed as though The trees at the left side of a mountain had started out very delicately colored. Perhaps a very light yellow that increased in brightness and intensity, so that by the time we'd looked to the right of the mountain, they were changed from trees to brilliant chrysanthemums. You'd all enjoy it very much. I can't say just what it was like, only seeing it for yourselves can impress the brilliancy of it. I think we hit the turnpike at about 9 o'clock and were off it some time round 3 o'clock, and from Harrisburg home it should only be a couple of hours wide. But since they were doing road work and traffic was heavy and congested, it took quite a while, and by the time we were home at about supper time on Thursday, we were giggling at everything there was to look at, funny or not. We were so very tired. We just flopped in bed and died. Lewis was very good. We've since thought and talked about it, and he really did behave himself most of the time. Everybody thought he had changed lots in the month that we'd been gone. And I guess he had.
This is such a wonderful description. And well, I have to tell you, so when I first came to Pennsylvania with my husband, he's from here, and we drive around, and I just marveled at all of the beautiful hills and the scenery. I'm like, this is a gorgeous view. This is such a gorgeous view. Look at this beautiful view. And he's like, I grew up with it. I never really noticed it. He's like, but you're right. It is a really beautiful view.
Yeah.
And to hear her describe, because I've driven the Pennsylvania Turnpike so many times, and I've always been like, oh, it's really pretty. But like to hear her describe it, I think I have a new appreciation
for what they did when they built that, the highway system coming in, the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Now, there's other things we could talk about the Pennsylvania Turnpike, but just looking at it from her perspective, here's a person that's grown up all her life in Iowa. Hills, yes, but like prairie, right? No mountains. There's no mountains in Iowa.
It's sky.
It's
sky. I grew up in flat Ohio, and it's just, you see the sky. You know, that's what she saw. Yeah.
Yep. And earlier in the letter, she said we were going through the lesser mountains. So there's still like some ridges and things. But the way they designed, at least the western portion of the Pennsylvania Turnpike, which is the location from very basically Pittsburgh, the western border of the state, to about Harrisburg, this whole section that she's talking about, the way that it just arcs around the mountains, and there's the tunnels, you know, to cut through some of the areas, and how you can see the valleys. Now, I just did this drive from the western part of the state back to the east, and I was really trying to take it in while also focusing on the road, because it's like 70 miles an hour.
I believe that you did, yes.
Yeah, but sort of like appreciate, I'm like, oh, look at that valley, you know, the falling off of the valley, because it looks like when you're going around some of these turns that it's just empty space because the valley's on this side and the mountain range is on the other. And what a wonder it was when it must have been built. And then she starts talking about things that aren't there anymore, the Howard Johnsons. Now we have the rest stops, but Howard Johnson, like, that was an event, going to the Howard Johnson, stopping on the turnpike. You can imagine all these young couples being so excited for like the first road trips potentially they've ever taken because of the whole system. And then the tunnels, and she mentions the state police being out there and watching for people that are like, you know, doing things they shouldn't do on the turnpike. She describes it as 4 lanes. It's now wider now in some sections and things like that. But then we also hear about the armed guards at the tunnels.
Yes.
And that's something we don't hear about at all. Now, I was talking to my dad, and I was talking with him when he was driving in the 60s down Pennsylvania Turnpike towards the west. Were there armed guards stationed at the tunnels in the early 60s? He said no. So what I'm thinking this is this is a World War II item, because it would be such a hindrance if something ever happened at the tunnels, right, to cut off that transportation. Sort of like bridges, like anytime there's a bridge or a tunnel, right, there's something there that like you don't want to like lose access to. So during the war, thinking about like spies, I have no reason to doubt that they would have posted guards at each of the tunnel entrances.
Makes sense.
Yeah, to keep an eye on, you know, just anything going on, just because of heightened alarm. It's 1946. The war's only been over for like a year, right? At the point there she's doing this drive, so I'm thinking the guards were still there. Now I wonder how long the guards remained. So we know by the 60s they're really not there. But this idea of like the visible guards, I think, is a World War II item that was still going on. That's my hypothesis on what they're doing there.
That makes sense. I mean, I'm sure it was like a huge ordeal to get these tunnels in. And if you go through now, you like, you see, there's a point where you go through a tunnel and then you go into another tunnel.
Yeah, it's really short. Like, so I feel like if people are driving and doing a road trip and you're thinking about going through Pennsylvania, at least this western portion, because when you get to the eastern portion, when you're east of Harrisburg being the sort of southern and like central area of Pennsylvania, then you run into traffic because you're heading towards Philly. And once you start heading towards Philadelphia, some things never change. Construction and traffic. There you go.
Well, I mean, there was some things like that, and it too. I told Allison, I was like, I'm going to bring it up. I don't care. So she said the turnpike was $4.50 for a round trip. $4.50 for a round trip ticket, and it's like a lot more today. In fact, the Pennsylvania Turnpike is the most expensive turnpike in the world today. In the world, and I said, and that means the universe too.
Yep.
So it's just super duper ultra mega expensive. It's not even close. So like, and $4.50 though, round trip ticket for the whole thing.
For the whole thing.
Thing, that's pretty good. Like for the whole thing. And I mean, it was an ordeal. It was an ordeal to get that built. But yeah, it's just, and their car was able to take it. And I think that maybe she was building it up just a little bit. So that people would be like, perhaps Chester would be like, maybe I need to go see these tunnels.
She calls it the Arc de Triomphe at one point.
I really think she was trying to get them to visit her.
As if it's Paris, right? Like the Arc de Triomphe, right, is the famous archway in the center of the circle in Paris. And she's like, the tunnels are like the Arc de Triomphe. Yeah, she is trying to like entice family to head into Pennsylvania.
But she's not wrong, because it is really, they are really impressive.
To carve them out of the mountains, yeah. And we do have a map here of these auto routes. So if people remember from when we did, we brought up the map when she traveled from Ottumwa down to Kansas City to head into Kansas.
By train.
Oh, by train. Yeah, we've seen the train map. In that same series, there's an auto map. And this is the map of the highways from 1936 to 1944. This is a picture of the actual document. I do have it from Rand McNally. So I'm going to bring this up so people can get a vision on the routes back in the 30s. So this was designed by Rand McNally. And the idea here was they wanted to give the routes because road trips are becoming a thing. So people needed to know distances. So I'm going to zoom in on Pennsylvania, and it can become a lot to stare at. You can kind of see the hubs like the trains, but same reason as the other map, because people are really starting to go cross country. So I'm going to zoom into the center section here, and we'll bring up Iowa so we can look at this route. And I know it can be kind of hard to follow this.
Oh, it is a little bit hard to follow.
Yeah, because there's a lot now. It's not just the train, but you can see Chicago.
There's Ottumwa. Yep, I can see Ottumwa.
Yep, we can see Ottumwa, and we can see Des Moines. And so she's probably going across Ottumwa, right? And then Iowa City's the old capital of Iowa. And we see Burlington. She mentions Burlington in the letter. And then we see Davenport. Now, if you're trying to like orient yourself, because what you can't see here is you can't see rivers, right? So you can't see that Mississippi River. But if you see on the map where it says Davenport is part of the Quad Cities. So that's basically the Mississippi River.
You can kind of see it, but it's just like they don't make a big deal of it, and that's not fun. But I can understand what they're trying to do here. So she probably traveled from Ottumwa over to Burlington and Peoria. Like that. That's probably the
That's the route. Yep. Now, these numbers are not the route numbers. These are mileage numbers between locations. So how far they're going to go. We know she doesn't go by Chicago, nor should she. She's pretty much, they're going to travel in some of the smaller roads, of course, as they head more east. And here's them traveling through Ohio. We can see Dayton.
Well, right there. If you, that road, that runs, that's the road I used to take when I would go visit my husband in Pennsylvania. It's like 70. So you go through Dayton, and then that takes you through Columbus. And I'm sure that road, that's exactly, so it's like 70 now. And then you can see Pittsburgh here, and you see how that road kind of goes south of Pittsburgh. Right, not too far from me is where you have the interchange for the turnpike. And I'm wondering if that's the place that she got on, and I bet it is.
It probably is, yeah. Now, on this map, they've called out that the more bold lines are the major routes, and the less bold lines are the minor routes. So the most bold line that people can see if they're unfamiliar with the Pennsylvania Turnpike is you can see Pittsburgh, and there's a very bold line that drops southeast and then goes around the bottom line of the state. That's the turnpike. That's going to be the representation. But we can see that it says from Pittsburgh on that route to Philadelphia, it's 291 miles. Or actually 291. It's longer than that. But it's about 300 miles to go across this portion that they're looking at. And that's where she would have been driving.
Mhm.
And I love this map because it is from exactly that time period. It's the type of map that they would have used to know these major routes. And we can see what's also amazing about this is the beginning of the major highway system. Because if I zoom out, one of the greatest things of the 20th century, which I think we just take for granted, is the building of the highway system.
Yeah.
It didn't exist prior to this. And if you let your eyes focus, I'm going to let everybody's eyes focus on this map for a moment so they can see the bolder lines versus the less bold lines. We can see where 95 is on this map as it goes north to south, the famous 95 stretch. So you can see sort of like some of these major through routes that are heading like north-south other than east-west. But definitely it's neat to see these early maps of the auto routes. Now, of course, we have GPS for all of this.
Well, I mean, this
Yeah.
is what they had. And one thing too about this map that's very interesting. I love that we're looking at this is like the birth of the highway system.
The highway system.
Notice one thing that they did here. Well, so in the corner here, in the far corner, they have, the major roads. They have Yellowstone Park. Did you see this? So that's probably one of the things that people were doing was traveling to Yellowstone Park.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. They want people to get to the national parks.
Mm-hmm.
What a treasure that was. This is the first road trips. But I love that you brought up the bottom left corner of the map because, Jamie, these are the most major routes of the time. So they're basically calling out this big map and they're saying, of everything that we've shown, these are the big routes. And it's probable that these are the main routes that would have existed prior to the highway system. So from like about the Great Depression to World War II, this was the highway system, really. So you can get a view of like what was there. And by 44, we get to this.
Wow.
So imagine like these are probably the old like carriage routes. There's things like if you study the history of roads, I know there's road historians. The train historians, I still think that the train historians take it for like level of dedication to their craft. But the road historians are very, very good. But we get this unique view of seeing like here's what was here. This would have been the routes. You can see this. There's things like if you go into like Virginia, like you hear things called the Telegraph Road because that's where all telegraphs were. I think that's either 95 or Route 1. The routes have always been followed. Like these are where the horses and the carriages would have gone by. We can be pretty sure this is how you'd cross the country prior to the automobiles. And they're of course the first roads that are going to be paved. You can see 95. Right?
It's really neat to see like what they had to deal with and and the beginning of the road trip era that we had in the United States. Yeah.
And here's your road trip guide. So that's what they were taking. And then, I just wanted to fill this in so people could get a visible, but so amazing. It's something we take for granted for sure. Our ease of travel. And this just shows the transformation that happened in the 20th century. And then there was one other thing I did want to bring up here because I mentioned I had the picture of the canteen in the alley. So you can see their sign here. And they're very proud of the fact that they are still open. Here.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's like this yellow brick building and it's not that big and it's in the alley and canteen lunch to this day. Landmark found in 1927. So we know that's where
we need to go.
Yeah.
We're going to go.
Hamburger sandwich time and milkshakes.
Milkshake. And Coke, which is great. Give me a Coke too. Is it Coke or Pepsi? Coke? I'm there. Let's go.
Clearly it's Coca-Cola on their wall over here. So at least as it was, this was taken in spring of 2023. So this photo. But yeah, really great time. But my goodness, what a trip. And then Sweetie has a typewriter. So she just keeps going. She just keeps going. So same letter. Part 2.
Well, let's see what she talks about now.
After we got home, the car would not start. It was using too much gas, and so Lou went to work on it. He borrowed a valve kit from the Navy base and proceeded to take the thing apart. He found all of the exhaust valves were ruined, and the intake were in need of attention too. He has a friend who is parts manager at a garage, and he helped him get new ones at a dealer's discount. He bought 6 exhaust valves for $5.88, and we took the intakes to the friend, who had them ground and refaced for 19 cents apiece. He had a mechanic come and grind the valve seatings for him for $1.50 and put the new and refaced valves in himself. Since he has had the carburetor cleaned and reset, though the mech said that he needed some new parts for that, he hasn't got them yet. He found one cell of his battery dead, and so by going back to the friend in the garage, he got a new Delco battery and a fan belt, both for $11. It has been quite chilly here, especially since we get up so early, and it is very cold when Lou leaves. So I took my foot in my hand and went to the friend again and bought him a car heater. An Arvin hot water heater, that is, according to the friend, scarcer than hen's teeth. He put in a request and got 2 more tires from the base, along with 2 inner tubes too. He had a flat and put one of the new inner tubes on the car, but I think that he will sell the 2 tires to the garage friend to repay him for saving us so much money. The heater is his 3rd anniversary gift, and it may turn out to be his Christmas present and his birthday present too. He broke something down in the clutch. What, I'm not sure, but he has wired it up and is driving it that way for the time being. Aside from that little thing that he needs to buy to get the clutch fixed, I think that the car is in pretty fair condition now, and it should be too. How is Bill making out with his Hudson? Is the Chevy running as well as you hoped or expected?
Yeah. Car needed some help.
They got a really good deal on that car, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
But Lou was able to do all this stuff himself.
Good thing. Yep.
Which was amazing.
And he knows people that know things and have things. So he's able to get some good deals and kind of fix up the car as it needs to be done. This whole part about the heater. Now, I'm not a person that understands really history of automobiles and things. And this is, I know, like a giant, how many car shows are there? But I guess there weren't too many heaters in cars at this point in time. So she's giving this Arvin hot water heater. So idea that's something you could install in a car and keep it warm, because I take for granted the fact that I have heated seats, let alone a heated car.
I'm never ever going back. I need heated seats. Yes.
Yeah, for the winter. But this is something that she gets, and she's like, that's his present, his anniversary gift. They'd been married on December 3rd, 1943, and his birthday is, I think it's December 29th, a few days after Christmas. So she's like, this is going to be for everything for that Oldsmobile. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure he appreciated it. Yeah, but how sweet. She's like, I'm going to get you a heater because it's cold.
It's cold outside. Yeah. Scarcer than hen's teeth.
Louis has changed a lot. We've taken some pictures that are fair, but we hope to get some good ones soon to send you. I do have a few that I'll try to send with this. They'll go first to the folks, and then they'll have to make the rounds from there, and if anybody is interested enough, they can ask for reprints. The ones taken when we were there, preparing to leave, should be returned, and then we'll get some more. I'm sending one of Johnny next door. It is quite a good likeness, and in with some of the others, you'll find one of his mother too, and you can see if he looks as silly as her letters sound. He'll be a year old the day before Susie will, and she's having 18 guests to a party for him. We're invited, and we don't know anybody else except them. Mama, Lou did not decorate the house as I had thought that he might. It is good and dirty. The wallpaper yet, and probably will remain so. Very soon after we got back, one of Lou's friends came down to visit us without his wife. We asked why she hadn't come too, and he said, well, we'll come down next Tuesday night. Lou said bring the Luttons with you, and before I knew it, there were 3 couples invited down, and no work done. So I had to put myself to work and get the fall house cleaning done. I did everything from windows and woodwork to floors and the cellar in 3 or 4 days, and was it a job? Well, it went over very well, I thought, aside from the fact that I spilt the furniture polish and couldn't get it all cleaned up, and the house smelled something like a cabinet factory. We had a nice lunch with sandwiches, potato chips, pickles, and I baked a cake, and we had coffee. They were here from about 7:30 till 12:30, and everybody seemed to have a nice time, though I've seen nothing of any of them since. My husband found himself in quite a festive mood for no apparent reason, and invited me out to dinner one night. We went to Horn and Hardart's Automat for dinner, cheaper and quicker, and then he took me to the Earl Theatre to see a putrid show. But the stage show was very good. Mickey Rooney was there in person with his entire company. There was a dozen chorus girls whose singing was more pathetic than anything else, but they could dance, and that was more important. There was a Negro act. 3 brothers who danced, and they were really good. Leonard Seuss was there with his orchestra and his trumpet. He is Eddie Cantor's protege, and is known as the young man with the horn. He was very good. There was a girl vocalist who was very good. She's quite well known, though I can't think of her name. She sounds better than she looks, I think. There were a couple of comic hillbilly singers, and they were only fair. Mickey Rooney was, of course, the highlight, and I think I enjoyed him more than I have on the screen. He did lots of imitations of Clark Gable, Lionel Barrymore, Jean Arthur, Edward G. Robinson, Peter Lorre, and Vaughn Monroe. I laughed until I began to ache, and when it was over, I went armed with a lead pencil and a garage mechanic's bill to the stage door, determined that I'd get his autograph to send to M.A. and Chris, and of course, he up and left the back way. There were many people waiting there, too, so Lou just thought he'd be smarter than the rest and opened the door and walked in. He looked around a little, and finding no one, he turned around and came back out, and when he opened the door, I started saying, "No autographs, please." And then we just walked off like we owned the place. But no autographs.
He's so funny.
Oh, the judging on all these acts.
Judging was the best, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's just like, what did she say? Hold on.
It's too good.
She sounds better than she looks, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh,
Yep.
really? And
Yep.
then, but this is really cool. Like, she doesn't know who she is. She's like, oh, that when she said about the chorus girls.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
I think I would trust Sweetie's opinion because she is a
She can
singer.
sing.
She can sing. She can sing. But that wasn't as important. Their dancing was better. But oh man, the judging.
The judging. And then just the scene of downtown Philadelphia. Like, this is a night in the city. This is the night downtown. And I remember, like, a few letters ago that we were listening to, she was cooped up in 936 Springfield Road, and they weren't letting her go anywhere. Like, she's like, I haven't even been anywhere. By this time, he's like, hey, let's go out for a night. Horn and Hard Arts was the, like, little sort of lunch shop, you know, and they're stopping, and they go to see all this. And there's so many people there, and there's so many different acts. A lot of different acts. And then Mickey Rooney shows up, and it's like, okay.
And Mickey Rooney's there, and she's seen him on the screen.
Yeah.
So, like, she had a wonderful evening with her husband.
Yep.
So sweet. I wonder where Lewis was.
Yeah, probably. Well, you know, she knows the couple next door, and I wonder if she asked them to watch the baby, you know, and there's stuff like that going on, so that she could have, like, the couple's evening. But then, like, nobody stayed in touch. Like,
oh yeah, like the. And you know, it's funny too because our first letter, when we go back to like, so she had so after they got back from their trip out to Iowa, they had a few friends over for an evening, and it was lovely. And she talks about in her first letter, she had found Bob's letter that Aunt Jeanne had wanted, and while she was doing her fall cleaning. So this is when she found, so like, so she was doing, like, trying to get ready for this night of, you know, a couple's night, and so that's when she found Bob's letter.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I haven't found Bob's letter in the collection.
Yeah, it's unfortunate we don't have those things, but
maybe one day it'll turn up. Maybe it's mixed in with something, but I have yet to see. Yeah, crossing my fingers to see something from Bob there. But yeah, what a night when they go downtown Philadelphia. If I have to imagine a night out in the 40s, this sounds like probably what it would be downtown in Philly. Yeah, and what a scene she paints of just everything going. And then this last little bit with the autographs. Oh, I'll just make myself the famous one. Let me go in the door and then act like somehow I was involved and then walk out. And then she immediately picks up on this.
Oh, yeah.
Of what he's doing. No. So, you know, but we didn't get our autographs. So,
yeah, which is unfortunate. But they're definitely on a wavelength. They're definitely connected. And that was so fun. That's so fun.
Great. Yeah.
We surely did enjoy Jean's write-up about her trip to the convention. The letter that we had from you first telling us that you'd been chosen to go to the convention. You sounded so pleased and all that we thought we must add to it a little to make it even more outstanding in your experiences, and so we sent you the flowers. I was almost certain that there would be some sort of dinner on Friday night, and so we just took a chance and demanded that they get there just on time. Apparently they did. I'm pleased that you were pleased. Your write-up to Mrs. Novotny was very good, we thought, and I wonder if he did comment on it too. I'm much chagrined that your birthday went unnoticed. We did go shopping, though, and your gift has been lying here day after day, waiting and waiting, just because I did not have a box suitable to send it to you. I have now, and so I will get it mailed out just as soon as I can. I bought it with an eye towards that new set that, according to Sister, is nothing short of a dream, and also in hopes that your Double Dare lipstick and rouge will match it well. I question the suitability of the gift, but leave it to your generous nature to reassure me when it arrives.
Happy birthday, Jeanne. Thank you for keeping this letter. Fantastic.
Thank
And
you,
for keeping the telegraph. Fantastic. But that's the end of the second part here, and we have one more part of this really giant letter to go into, and here comes part 3.
How sorry I was to have missed Aunt Mary and Uncle Cyril. We did not arrive in Indiana until the second day of our trip, and we were so far behind schedule by that time, and with car repairs and all, we just couldn't entertain any thought of stopping over, but came right on through as quickly as we could. I find some questions. Yes, Sister, we did get good food, and it wasn't quite as expensive as I had thought. We stayed at a tourist home. I suppose it could be called a motel. It was a huge farmhouse that was beautifully furnished, and the upper bedrooms were rented out each night. We did not get any meals there. We all had colds, and were nearly sick from lack of sleep, as well as the colds. But we are okay now, though I gave Big Lou the liquid penicillin, and then he begged some sulfa from a druggist friend of his to beat his cold. Send us some sulfa and some aspirin, will you please? And we'd like to have some vitamin pills, Jeanne. Yes, you can send us some popcorn. I prefer the small rice kind, if I am to be choosy about it. I'm going to get a popper from somewhere, and use what you did send me. I tried to buy some, and found only an 8-ounce can of it for 15 cents. Can you imagine that? I enjoyed very much your various accounts of your visits with Florence and her children, even if I did get to see them for a little while. It increased my visit to hear it again from you. I'm glad that little R was picking up good, and I go every once in a while to see a friend's baby, just to get an idea of how big he should be by now. I thought about you Halloween, and wondered if perhaps you were forced to make frequent trips over to the Butlers because of the rough treatment that the telephone booth received when I was still with you last year. I was quite surprised to see the lack of damage done here. They have 2 nights here. One is Mischief Night, when the kids go out armed with soap, and they did do a very good job of soaping lots of windows. Ours were untouched. And the next night is Halloween, when they go from door to door asking for treats. I don't know the custom, and so was without the usual cookies or nuts. I apologized for having forgotten it, and they very politely excused me by saying it had probably been a long time since I was young enough to go out. Great day. Cut of the mouths of babes. I thought of you during the election time. Didn't remember that you were running for coroner until I read in your letter that you'd been elected. I knew you'd feel badly about it.
So Halloween is a new thing for her. That's fun.
New thing for her. And notice no candy. Cookies or nuts. So something happened here in the time period that's passed since the 40s, where Halloween was probably more based on those items than confections and things. So definitely a change. And at least Mischief Night, of course, kind of also new to her. Like, what are they doing? So what is happening here? Welcome to Philly.
That's fun. That's funny though. Oh,
Mhm.
It is really it's really interesting to see that the customs and the difference in the customs in the country.
Mhm.
You know, things that she was not used to,
Oh yeah.
that other
Mhm.
people had just taken for granted because it was something they'd grown up with.
Yeah.
So for her to like have this new experience because I said, out in Lacona, or it was very small.
Oh yeah.
But then for the
Big
kids
neighborhood.
to say that she was so old.
She's in her 20s.
I know. I goes, oh, it's okay. You're just you're old, so you probably spent a long time.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah.
Mhm.
So with this coroner, I'm guessing that Dr.
I
Chester
think it's
is now
Chester.
the coroner,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and he
And
doesn't
he
like
feels
it.
badly about it. Yeah. Unwittingly. Voluntold, probably, back in Lacona. I assume this is coroner. But, well, I guess coroner is more county, at least in Pennsylvania it's county. So it could be
Yeah,
Warren
it's
County
like a county.
coroner, I would imagine. But I have to think this is Chester, for sure.
Yes, I wish you could see Louis, too. He hasn't changed such a great deal in looks. I'm sure if you saw him, he'd be spirited away, again, for his second haircut. We're going to get it done soon, but 85 cents for a little boy's haircut is a great incentive to keep him a baby a little longer still. He has developed a lazy method of talking. He has a sound much like a pigeon, with that throaty little sound that means almost everything. It started out as his first baby attempt at saying cracker, and now it is caw, with the throaty effects until he does sound like a pigeon. It is no longer just cracker, but means anything from a drink of water to a cookie or anything else. Like Chris and his ner, he does say a few words like two for shoe, and he says toe, hello is recognizable, ba is bath or bathroom. He says mama and daddy, bye bye, and a few other words. However, he will not say toe. It is toe or tutu. Everything must come in pairs, it seems. Like father, like son, he can be very stubborn. If he is playing with something he isn't supposed to have, for instance, he picks up the ashtrays, and when I say, Louis, put those down, he comes at me wildly gesticulating as he scolds back. He's gotten to the place where he shakes his forefinger in my face and points at the ashtrays, and then goes off into a spiel that only Susie could understand, and if I can keep from laughing in his face, I'm powerless to go further before I laugh. He wears diapers only when he goes to bed at night, and never wets himself during the day unless he is tired enough to be sassy, and then he does it just for naughtiness. And for 14 months? I think that is pretty good. He does love to be outdoors, and we do go out every day. He is so big and fat that he has broken his little wartime stroller twice. The first time Daddy fixed it for us, but he hasn't had time to look about it now, and I'm not sure that he can do it. The other day, when it was particularly nice, we walked from here up to Lou's mother's, where Lou met us on his way from the base and brought us back home. It is about 3.5 miles, and that is when we broke the stroller the last time. Maida, you aren't the only one who is having difficulty in breaking away from the bottle. I tried it, and heavens, what a session we had. I got him to the place where he dropped off to sleep through sheer exhaustion, but he couldn't sleep soundly, and woke up to renew his efforts. He demands it, and according to the book that Daddy sent me to read, he won't be pushed, and so I've relaxed my efforts and will give it another try again soon. But now, he has the bottle. He really is a pretty good kid, though, and is happiest when he can pummel the kid next door. How I laughed to read about Jeanne falling in Davenport. That letter has entertained me for days and days, and when I need another laugh, I dig it up and read about the fall all over again. I certainly did enjoy all the birthday cards and gifts. To borrow a phrase from M.A., I surely am rich in relatives. I haven't worn the pajamas, Jeanne, though. I'm just waiting for the first cold night to put these on. They are very pretty, and it somehow seems a shame to wear them to bed, where nobody will see them. The girl next door said she was going to pick the first cold morning, and then come and knock on the door to see me come to the door in them. I told her she'd just have to stick around for a little while, and I'd model them for her. While I think of it, I left the hair that came from Louis's first haircut in the table of that, in the drawer of that oval table in the upstairs hall. Save it for me. We thought the luncheon cloth very nice, and will be very pretty on our dining room table, as it is oblong, and though it is bigger, it will be very pretty. I had to look to find the darns, and if you'd just kept still, nobody would have known. I haven't gotten the permanent yet, Mama, though I think I will before Christmas. I kinda hate to have it cut now, when I'd like to have it short in the summer, but as Lou says, worry about having it cut again when the time comes. I wash it and put it up real tight for 2 days. When I take it down, it looks very nice for 1 day, and then the neck hairs all fall down straight, and then it looks as though it hadn't been put up at all. so I'm going to get it down.
Yeah. All these updates about Lewis, really.
Oh, all the fun updates about Lewis and like what
Mhm.
all he's going through.
Yep. Yep.
And I do appreciate too, like at the very end here, when she's like, I tried to get him off the bottle and it wasn't happening, so I just backed
Mhm.
off. I'm going to do it again.
Yep.
That's the way you got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's so rough, man. This took me back. This took me back
Yeah.
because my girl was very easy and my boy was
Not-
amazing. But yeah, but I can see, and it's really kind of funny because he did the double thing too, like drink.
Oh, the pairs, the talking in pairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's the words learning.
That's
Yeah.
kind of fun. And I know girls and boys are different and they have like different, and like the boys don't, their language does not develop as early as the girls do. So they have that it comes along when it needs to. It's fine.
Yeah.
But that did remind me of like when my boy was little.
Yeah. And the last thing we knew, actually, right before they went out there, she was wondering, we went over this in the last episode, he's walking now, too. So it's this gesturing, running around, laughing, like, sort of pairs and things. Yeah, but he's definitely growing. Obviously, he's now 14 months old. And then she's talking about, I love this little part about even the pajamas are too pretty. I love that little section. She's like, oh, wait, I'm not sure I can wear these. They're too good. But the girl next door might come over and be like, I'll just knock when it's really cold and it's first thing in the morning, and then you'll have to show up in them, and then we'll see how they are. Like, yeah, that's a lot, but so cute.
She seems to be making friends with the girl next door.
She does. Yeah.
Although she's not really mentioning her by name.
Nope.
No, she hasn't really said, which is, I think, is a little bit like they're not quite on that level.
Yeah.
But she does seem to, she's got a little relationship there.
Elizabeth got me 2 pair of nylon stockings, and Mom got me a reknit needle that so far I haven't worked very successfully. Maybe Lou can fix it with a little pinch in the right place. Lou got me an umbrella, the first I think I've ever owned, a slip, a brassiere, and another pair of nylons. Thanks, Maida. Or I should say Susie for the nice card and the letter. I hope you're well, Maida. You didn't say, but no doubt you're anxious for February to roll around. Susie seems to be doing well on her talking, and I know you're pleased. I can picture you at home now, since I've been there, and it is a great deal more satisfactory than before. Lewis does so hate to have me sit down to read a paper or a book or anything else that takes attention from him. He comes and pulls at me and screams, Mama, 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 until I'm nearly writing Mama. So it is with letter writing. He has fretted this whole time I've been writing, and so I guess his endurance and mine have gone as far as possible. I hope to have Elizabeth's typewriter here for a while at least, and so I shall try to keep up writing to you. But now I must stop and tend to Lewis for a while. Do write and ask as many questions as you like. I realize that this letter is quite disjointed, badly typed and all, but it is hard to type as well as concentrate when Lewis is tugging at my arm or trying to get to the typewriter keys to do a little typing all his own. I'll write again soon, but I think of you all and wonder each day how you are. I love you very much. You know that. Yours, Sweetie, Lou, and Lewis.
Okay.
Long letter. Yeah.
That was a letter.
Her endurance. She's talking about her endurance. That was a big one. She has that typewriter from Elizabeth. That's where she keeps borrowing the typewriter. She doesn't have her own yet. But she's going to get, look, you don't need the typewriter, okay? Clearly you're not writing these giant
she
letters.
doesn't need it.
So just let's
that with Sweetie, this typewriter is getting way more use.
Yeah.
But was something that we had discussed before was her going out to this trip and not wanting to return to Philadelphia, not wanting to return to Love Lane in Delco. That doesn't really have seemed to have been the case.
Right.
I don't think that there was a problem. I think that when it was time to go, she was time to go. And she really enjoyed the trip back.
Yeah. She's healing. They're repairing a lot of things. She had a rough start in Delco at the in-laws house. So the idea of maybe she struggled a bit. It sounds like she spent about a month out there. She revealed in this letter she needed that month to be with family. She needed to sort of finish her healing journey there with the family. And then they come back, and now she's getting back into like the groove. Like, Sweetie's got
That's her
groove
home.
back. Yeah.
That's her home. It's really funny because she must have been out there for a little while and Lou was by himself.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe she was expecting the house to be a little bit different when she got back.
Yeah, I don't think that happened.
No, it didn't. She mentioned it, but it's like, but that was fun. But a lot of it was like, too, she's like, okay, well, now I got to get back to like my routine and the things that I'm doing and the things I enjoy and the things I love. And and this last one of these paragraphs where she discussed like what they got her for her birthday, and she talks to Maida.
Yeah. How important is that we start to see that relationship building a bit, or it's implied that that's building up, that they have this bond. Yeah.
Yeah, and she was able to see Maida, and now that she has like this image of where they are, she can picture that in her head when she's writing to them and stuff. And I think that really is going a long way for her, keeping her back out in Philadelphia. I want to say Philadelphia. We'll say Love Lane. Yeah. To keep her out in Love Lane. Yeah, she has that now to keep her. Because when you get to that point in your life too, you have to start forging your own path. Yeah. And the way that things are going, she married a man who's from that area, and that's who she fell in love with, and that's who she's with. And so there's these changes that are coming along in her life, and she's rolling with it. She speaks of little Lewis's stubbornness coming from his dad, but I think that there's some from her as well.
Yeah, I don't think that's exactly all Lou. That's definitely from her. But what a letter to have for episode 50. I mean, what a significant letter. What a changing of the pace. Because when we started with season 2, it started with this, I don't want to go there, And then she gets there and this awful thing happens. And it just dominates the whole first half of 1946. As it necessarily, it would dominate the first half. But then she's in a place she doesn't want to be at. And she just wants to get home. And she gets home. And then she realizes her home is elsewhere. And she's okay with that being the case. Like, we finally get to, I think, like this breath that's letting go and saying it's time. So, yeah, she's a Pennsylvanian now. I think this is the moment she realizes where her home now is. And it took the whole, 6 months of 1946 of actually going to Pennsylvania to realize where she belongs. And she's starting to fit in with things. So what a great moment to achieve, for episode 50. But yeah, Jamie, 50 episodes, Sweeties now. I'm going to say it, Pennsylvanian. Took a while, but she got there. And there they are at Love Lane. And that's where we're going to leave them right before Christmas of 1946. Thank you, everybody, for listening to today's episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm going to be driving. Well, yeah, when this episode actually is going to air, I will have just driven that western portion of the Pennsylvania Turnpike again. So I'm going to try to look out the window safely while driving quickly along that turnpike and heading back towards Philadelphia. But thank you to our whole audience, and see you next week.